Greetings, everyone. In this video, we want to discuss briefly the meetings by the two ministers of foreign affairs from Zimbabwe and South Africa. It was reported that the Minister of Foreign Affairs from Zimbabwe visited South Africa and met with his counterpart, Minister Alendi Panda, the South African Minister of International Relations, as part of reviewing the biannual meeting. We then promised yesterday when we recorded a video that we will not comment after or before we meet with the minister, because we had made a request through the Zimbabwean ambassador that we meet with the Zimbabwean Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Frederick Shaba. Unfortunately, the meeting with the minister did not happen. What he was saying was that Harare is ready to welcome holders of the Zimbabwe exemption permits. So this is what we want to discuss. Is Zimbabwe ready to welcome holders of the Zimbabwe exemption permit? We know that the grace period that was granted by the South African cabinet will expire on the 31st of December 2022. I am Ngabuto Nicholas Mapena. Please like this video, circulate your contacts. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel. This morning, Comrade Monica Kekan, when she was commenting on YouTube channel, was watching one video which I uploaded, the one that I recorded from the village. She says next video must be about the Minister of Foreign Affairs. And what makes it interesting is that she says, Comrade Mapena, when you're recording the video, you must be crying to show that South Africa is not a home for Zimbabweans. Comrade Monica, there's no reason to cry. But let's get to understand this. When the South African cabinet announced on the 25th of November 2021 that it will not renew the Zimbabwe exemption permits, and that it will grant a 12-month grace period for holders of ZEP to move to other visas, as outlined in the Immigration Act. We said in our statement that we welcome the decision, even though we do not agree with the decision, but because South Africa is a sovereign state, it has a right to make its laws. And we said we're going to respect the decision of the South African cabinet, but indicated that it will continue to make presentations to the South African government to review its position, not to renew the Zimbabwe exemption permits. So there was no way where we said we will fight the decision, but even if we do not agree with the decision, we said we respect the decision because it is a decision made by a sovereign state. Excuse. It's a decision made by a sovereign state. And we indeed said we do not seek to co-govern with the South African government. We are migrants, we are Zimbabweans ourselves living in South Africa. But we said we will continue to engage the government and the other stakeholders, mobilize progressive South Africans to ask the South African cabinet to review its decision on humanitarian grounds. We went on to say, in our understanding in 2010, which in the previous video we did quote, was that the special permits were granted under special circumstances. And those special circumstances had not changed. that is a reality that in Zimbabwe, those specials, the circumstances that led to the granting of the special permits had not changed. Secondly, we said that the people that applied for the documentation Zimbabwe project, ZEP, as it was known, would not qualify under any other visa or permit provided for under the Immigration Act. Hence, when they came to South Africa before 2010, they did not apply for these other visas because they could not qualify. To an extent that the majority then flooded the Aslam regime, as it were, because they were using the Aslam document for the purposes of working, starting, or running a business because they would not qualify for others. So, because these are people of low skin in the majority, they couldn't qualify. Hence, then the special permits were granted. And we also noted that before the announcement was made to grant the special permits to Zimbabweans in 2010, there was extensive consultation between the ministers of Home Affairs of both countries. At the time in 2010, because we did not ourselves attend the meetings of the ministers, but we would meet separately with the ministers, the Minister of Home Affairs in South Africa, and the core ministers at the time of Home Affairs in Zimbabwe. So whenever Honorable Kembo Mohati and Honorable Teresa Magoni would visit South Africa for the purposes of having these discussions, first and foremost, they will consult with us, Zimbabweans in South Africa, to say what are the issues, what should we raise with our South African counterpart. They will clearly say, we live in Zimbabwe, we might not be sure of the issues, even though they were communicating also with the embassy. But they thought it was necessary to also engage us so that they have a clear understanding when they then make a presentation to the South African Minister of Home Affairs. They will have consulted us and taken our input on board. And this is what happened in 2010. The permits, as we outlined in the previous video, then expired in 2014. You remember in 2014, Honorable Nalendi Panda was Minister of Home Affairs, which they were about to expire, was Minister of Home Affairs. Before the 2014 elections, she had said holders of ZEP will not be allowed to renew the ZEP in South Africa, but they will have to go to their country of origin to renew the ZEP. That was the position that was announced by the then Minister of Home Affairs, Honorable Nalendi Panda, who is now Minister of International Relations. Then with the South African elections, general elections in 2014, former President Zuma then appointed Minister Malus Kigaba as a Minister of Home Affairs. Again, we did meet a civil society in Pretoria with about 3 or 4 meetings with Minister Malus Kigaba separately. We also had meetings with Honorable Kembo Mohati separately. We met in a hotel in Sandton. I think we met twice. We met also at the embassy in Pretoria, ahead of his meetings with the then Minister of Home Affairs, Honorable Malus Kigaba, because the argument by Honorable Kembo Mohati and ourselves at the time was that it was critical that a government minister from Zimbabwe who comes to South Africa to engage on documentation issues must consult with the concerned individuals. And this is what Honorable Kembo Mohati did. We did assist him with some talking points when he went to meet with Honorable Malusi Gaba. And the result of that was that the TZP was closed down, and then a new special permit was granted, which was known as the Zimbabwe Special Permit ZSP. That was in 2014. It was granted for 3 years. In 2017, the permit was expiring again, the ZSP. We again met with the then Zimbabwean Minister of Home Affairs, Dr. Ignatius Chombo. Then he was the Minister of Home Affairs. I remember I traveled to Harare for meetings with Dr. Ignatius Chombo to brief him about the situation on the ground vis-a-vis the holders of ZSP, which were about to expire. And we also made the consultations with the former Minister of Home Affairs, who was then Deputy President. No, he was not a Deputy President, but he had moved to being Minister of State Security, Honorable Kembo Mohati, before he became Deputy President. So we also consulted him on the basis that he had a history of the special permits that were issued from 2010. And also, because the Honorable Mohati was also in consultation with the Minister Nosiviwe Mapisa Nqakula before the appointment of Dr. Nkosazana Zuma as Minister of Home Affairs, because the issues of documentation were being discussed before Dr. Nkosazana Zuma was appointed Minister of Home Affairs. And you remember the 90-day 90-day visa, or what you call 90 days, which are granted at the border. That was negotiated, or there was a discussion between the two ministers. Then it was a minister who's now Speaker of the South African Parliament, Nosiviwe Mapisa Nqakula, and Honorable Kembo Mohati. So because of that history, in 2017, we were to consult even Honorable Kembo Mohati. So I remember that a meeting then happened between the late South African Minister of Home Affairs, Professor Hlengwe Mkhize. The meeting happened in Eswatini. There was a SADC meeting in Eswatini, and Honorable Kembo Mohati took that opportunity to engage his South African counterpart, the late Professor Mkhize, about the expiry of the ZSP. It was then announced later in the year in 2017 that that permit regime known as the Zimbabwe Special Permit ZSP was going to be closed down, and as Zimbabwe Exemption Permit ZEP was then going to be brought into being for 4 years. So there have been always consultations between ministers of the two countries, but the Zimbabwean ministers will always consult with us, civil society. The ministers in South Africa will consult with us, civil society, to also get a perspective of what is happening. That does not mean that ourselves will lead to holders of ZEP and the Zimbabweans in general in South Africa. We seek to co-govern. That's not the issue, to co-govern with the ANC-led government, but it is to understand what is happening, so that when these issues are discussed at that level by the ministers of both countries, they will take into account the issues that you are raising. In 2019, in December, it's important to mention this. We did meet as part of the leadership of the African Diaspora Forum. I think it was the 5th of December, 2019, in Pretoria, with the minister, Dr. Aaron Twaleti, again to discuss this issue of documentation broadly. We're discussing it broadly, though. It was not specific on the Zimbabwe exemption permits, but it was broadly the documentation of migrants, how we can build the social cohesion, migrants, South Africans' integration in our community. So it was a broader discussion. But in that discussion, we then discussed with the minister, current Minister of Home Affairs, in December 2019, the issue of the Zimbabwe exemption permits. Well, I will not get into details in what we discussed, because it will be wrong for me to then say these things. Next time, the minister and other leaders will lose confidence in me to say, Comrade Mapena, we discussed these things with you. You then go to your YouTube channel and give details of what we discussed. But other than to say, we did discuss this thing. But in our discussion in 2019 in December, yes, the minister did say he was going to consult on what will happen to the ZEP. He did express his views, which I will not mention here. But the underlining thing is that he had said he was going to consult. Recently, I did meet with him. We discussed briefly at the burial of former Deputy Secretary General of the African National Congress, Comrade Jess Juwat. We met at the cemetery. So we greeted each other. I said, Minister, I remember we had this discussion in your office. And the minister said, oh, yes, I remember. That time I was still new in the Department of Home Affairs, still trying to find my feet. That's what the minister had said. And again, I will not share what we discussed at the burial of the ANC Deputy Secretary General. Otherwise, again, I will not be trusted anymore. But the point that I am making is that, before I get to the point that I want to make in respect to both Minister Frederick Shaba, the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Zimbabwe, and the Zimbabwean Home Affairs Minister, Minister Kazembe, is that when the South African government, through the Department of Home Affairs, was making proposals in its Immigration Act, reviewing the white paper on international migration as adopted in 1999. In the previous video, we did raise this issue to say, from a South African point of view, as we understood at that time, was that the white paper on international migration as adopted in 1999 was Eurocentric. And we're explaining this, that because the qualifications required or the skills required are scarce in Africa, not only in South Africa. Meaning you will only attract professionals from New Zealand, Australia, Europe, North America. You will attract very few in the continent. We spoke about our colonial legacy, our colonial education legacy, where we said in the previous video that very few Africans are scientists. This skill is not only scarce in South Africa, it is scarce in the entire continent. And we had said post-liberation, we have not transformed our educational institutions to build a proper base. I will post a video later on in the next 2 days or so about the rural school, my former school in the village that I visited, where we also discussed this thing about our failure in Africa to provide sound education, if I were to use that phrase, sound education at the primary level so that you produce kids that will go on to study sciences or science subjects at a university. So that's the colonial legacy. And the post-liberation, most African countries, we have not really transformed our educational system. So when the South African government was then reviewing the white paper on international migration, because it was seen as not pan-African, again, we were consulted by the South African government through the ministry or the Department of Home Affairs. Comrade Gigaba, Honorable Malus Gigaba was minister then. We participated in some of the meetings, and some of the proposals that we made were clear that were captured. Let me just run through some of the three proposals that we made that were then captured in the white paper on international migration as gazetted in 2017, which we understand now is being reviewed. There's an proposed overhaul of the entire Immigration Act, and we suspect that based on the discussions that arose from the ANC policy conference, that document is going to be thrown out of the window. As far as we understand, we might be wrong, but this is what we think will happen. What we had proposed was that our economy in the region is becoming more informal in the region. There's a lot of cross-border trade. I recorded, I think 2 days ago or so, about the cross-border trade between Zimbabwe and Zambia. So there's a lot of movement within the SADC region, cross-border trade. But the challenge that people face, and in the previous video, we did say, in the most cases, cross-border trade becomes one way, down south where Zimbabweans, Mozambicans will come and buy products, or people from Eswatini will come and buy products in South Africa for resale in their own countries. But a person who then comes to do business for 2 weeks gets granted maybe 3 days at the port of entry. Maybe the person is going to Eastern Cape to sell their products in Eastern Cape. But when you are at Bedford Border Post, they are given 3 days. By the time you get to Eastern Cape, your 3 days are already up. When you get to the port of entry, you are declared undesirable. Initially, they will say you pay 3,000 rands fine or banned for a year, between a year to 5 years. That became problematic. So we then had many people who were people in the cross-border industry, if I were to use that term, who were then declared undesirable because they were given few days at the port. And also, this also promotes corruption at the port of entry because the immigration officials will then ask you to buy days. So in other words, you have to bribe an immigration official to give you more days for you to be in South Africa. It promotes corruption. So we raised all these issues. And as the result of that, the proposal, which is contained in the white paper on international migration, was that there must be a SADC cross-border visa. Of course, its lifespan was going to be guided by an act of parliament. But as I was saying, we think this document is going to be thrown out of the window. The second point that we raised was that within the SADC region in the May, you have people that are moving, people of low skill. In Botswana, they will be going there employed as head boys to look after someone's cake or goats. In South Africa, they will be working in farms, they will be working as domestic workers, they'll be working in the construction industry. And we said these people will not qualify for any other visa. And this was then captured that you need to grant a SADC work visa specifically for people of low skill. Who do that kind of jobs, which in the main will not qualify for other visas as provided for in the Immigration Act. And the other one, of course, was the business visa, because we have people that are running small-scale businesses. They will not qualify for a cooperative visa. So we raised all these issues, and it was captured in the 2017 white paper document which was gazetted. So all this has been a process of consultation where we've been engaged, where we put also our views. So when Minister Frederick Shaba, when he then comes to South Africa for a meeting with the Minister Naledi Pandor, and a part of the discussion is about documentation. We only hear it through the media that is coming to South Africa. We are not informed. We are not firstly and foremost invited by the Zimbabwean ambassador to say, comrades, the Minister of Foreign Affairs will be visiting South Africa. What are the issues that you want us to raise with the minister, which he can raise with his counterpart? That does not happen. So the minister flies all the way from Harare. We only hear, when I woke up in the morning, I only hear that today the Minister of International Relations, Dr. Naledi Pandor, is hosting her Zimbabwean counterpart, and part of the issues to be discussed is documentation, ZEP, and so forth. And we're like, but why are we not being informed by our own Zimbabwean government? We then immediately contact the Zimbabwean embassy to say, we want to meet with the minister from Harare because we do not think it is correct for him to go to a minister with Dr. Naledi Pandor without talking to us to understand the issues. And of course, the meeting did not happen, and we get a message later in the evening, later in the afternoon towards evening, that the minister would not be able to meet with us, as already held a meeting with his counterpart in South Africa. He is leaving in the morning for Harare. And that was it. So you have a minister that goes to speak on our behalf, uninformed on what is happening. The minister, as what we then saw being reported, he mixes issues. He fails because he's not informed to separate the issue of special documentation, which was granted under the Immigration Act because holders of ZEP respect South African laws. This is why in 2010, which we quoted in the previous video, if you can check the statement that was issued by then Minister Dr. Nkosazana Zuma, was that these permits are granted under the Immigration Act because the minister has the powers in terms of the Immigration Act to document anyone. And a person that then came forward to apply for DZP in 2010 respected the South African laws. So there's no way that 12 years later, we can say holders of ZEP should respect South African laws. It will appear as if they did not. He fails to make a distinction between the criminal networks from Zimbabwe. Because it is common cause that you have criminal networks from Zimbabwe that operate in South Africa that do not respect South African laws. And we have always said that the law must take its course. Anyone who's arrested for armed robbery, catch in transit, hijackings, or any other criminal act must be dealt by the South African law. These two are separate. And the minister does not, because he's not informed, does not make this distinction. He then says Harare is ready to welcome holders of Zimbabwe exemption permit when people are still flocking to South Africa. How do you welcome 170,000 people who are holders of ZEP, but you can't take care of those that are in Zimbabwe? Would understand to an extent that the Zimbabwean government has created conditions for those that are in Zimbabwe not to cross the border to South Africa or to Botswana. Will then begin to say, yes, indeed, the Zimbabwean government is ready to welcome. But you can't say you are welcoming holders of ZEP, but still you have Many undocumented Zimbabweans who are coming to South Africa for opportunities because you can't take care of them in Zimbabwe. And the real problem is that we do not want to accept, which was different in 2010, by the way. In 2010, we accepted, the government of Zimbabwe accepted that we have serious issues in rebuilding our economy. And the Zimbabwean government pleaded with the South African government to say, please, give us a space to try and rebuild our economy, assist us by keeping the Zimbabweans that are in your country, by granting them special permits, so that when they are legally in your country working, through their remittances, they will also contribute in the rebuilding of the Zimbabwean economy. That was the understanding in 2010. When the conditions are now far worse than they were in 2010, when we were using the multi-currency regime, and then now you are saying you are ready to welcome holders of Zimbabwe exemption permits, we think that is not correct. So in conclusion, our Minister of Foreign Affairs in Zimbabwe came to South Africa, held these meetings, but the ego to say whether it is the ego or whether which we think is uninformed, you spend most of his time as the ambassador in the United States, so he's out of touch. The ambassador who is in Pretoria was ambassador in France, so he's out of touch as well. So this is why he doesn't see the need to say let's invite civil society for a meeting at the embassy to prepare notes for the minister when he arrives. And so he does not understand the Pan-African culture because they've spent their time in the West. That's where the problem is. So, comrades, please like the video. We thought we needed to explain this. This video is becoming long. Comrade Nonhle Muko says, thank you so much, Mr. Mapena, for great job you are doing. May God bless you. Thank you so much, Comrade Nopli. And then Comrade Ja Prosper says, how can your country not be ready for its citizens? When I go back to SA, contracts get terminated here. I don't expect SA government to welcome me back. Why are you making going home a big thing? The reality, Comrade Ja Prosper, is that the economy in Zimbabwe has collapsed and the Zimbabwean government is failing to rebuild the economy. And it is a fact that people are leaving the country. We should not create conditions where people live through illegal means. So we are talking reality. We are not talking perceptions. Comrade Ramlet Walata says, you are talking sense, Mr. Mapena. Thank you so much. Comrades, thank you so much. Otherwise, have a great day. Please remember to subscribe and circulate this video. Last one, Comrade Confidence Banda says, morning, Comrade. Clearly, we don't have leaders in Zimbabwe. Our minister can't even talk about the pressing issues we are facing. He was given a platform to negotiate and failed to see it. And what is also bad is that it was the first time that he came to South Africa after the brutal murder of Elvis Inyati. And that does not get erased. It does not erase these issues. But well, we are used to being commanded. So this is why it doesn't think there's need to consult us. Otherwise, have a great day, comrades. Goodbye.